Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. The name of the show is Fed Pride. Reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker. Proud of it. As you know, I have Google Earth behind me, and I can make the Google Earth go where and do what I want. And unfortunately, I didn't quite set it up the way I should. So while I talk, I am going to put this, disappear myself, and go fix the Google Earth over here and fix it so that the location is showing my, I have a little spot there that I can move and change the Earth. It's just now coming into view. And that enables me to be able to manipulate the world, which of course is something that somebody who is egotistical enough to do a show like this probably wants. There it is, coming into view. And let's see if we get the up and down button on the side, which is happening. And let's see if I can bring this down a little bit, or maybe force it into a zoom. There we go. Okay, so now I'm able to actually manipulate the world over here, and let's see if I can get this done. Still not quite working. Okay, I'm going to bring myself back, and but now I definitely can move the world. Let's see if it's all messed up today. Yep, there we go. And I'm in control of the Earth, and I can zoom in and zoom out, which is kind of neat, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to South America. But first I'm going to make a couple little statements about the big story of this week. For me, it's the 20th of April. It's Friday. For you, it's at least the 23rd. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. The 24th of April. It's either Tuesday or it's the following Sunday, or if this is a rerun, news is so old that you've got to almost chuckle a little bit. However, this week the big story has been the murders on the University of Virginia, Virginia Tech campus on Blacksburg, Virginia. A guy who was born in South Korea but raised in the United States, apparently came in when he was 8. Paranoid schizophrenic, wouldn't talk to anybody, impossible to deal with, scared the heck out of his teachers, scared his fellow students, went mad, and shot a girl and an RA in a dorm. Apparently not the dorm that he lived in, but it might have been. And then put together a manifesto, sent it to the news, and went into a classroom building, and then killed a bunch of people in a technical class, more in a French class, more in a German class. Some heroes, when he left one of the rooms, blocked the door, so he was unable to go back into a specific room, and then eventually was surrounded by police and shot himself. His name was Cho. His last name was Cho. Seung-hee Hui Cho, I believe his name was. I am not going to go into it in detail. I'm not going to go on and on about it. It's been nonstop coverage and everything from Fox News Network and CNN all the way to the tabloid channels, and then all the way to NPR and ABC and NBC and so on and so forth. So it's a terrible thing. It's very, very sad that it happened. I'm not going to make any political judgments about it. I feel very bad about it. I feel for the families, and I hope that they can get through this. Usually, you know, people try to put a political spin or connotation on it. I think it's clear that the guy was mentally ill. He had been treated. He had been recommended at one point to be taken away from society and wasn't. And the whole thing is just terrible and horrible. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about what's going on in Latin America. Why am I going to talk about it? Is it that important? In my opinion, the balance of power in the world is changing. One of the reasons is because we got bogged down in Iraq. And I have a story about that, which I probably won't have time to tell. But the main reason is because once you have a hegemony, which we are, the hegemony is also responsible to maintain the world status quo. And in our case, what does that mean? That means international economic system. That means the trading lanes. The trading lanes are absolutely vital. And we are the only power that has the strong navy that can preserve these trading lanes. 6 choke points in the trading lane, one of which is right down here, and that is this Straits of Magellan between Tierra del Fuego and South America. The other choke point in South America is over here, which is the Panama Canal, which we gave away and then had to overthrow a dictator. There's a choke point right here between Cuba and Florida for the trade through the Gulf of Mexico. These areas over here have a lot of shoals and things like that. There's another choke point right near Grenada, of all places, where we just happen to have another battle. Where are the other choke points? Choke point right here, Straits of Gibraltar, controlled by Spain. Another one right here, which is Istanbul, the separation point between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. The one that everybody worries about is the Arabian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, which is right here. There's another strait right here between the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. And then there's one that people don't talk about, but that's one of the reasons Singapore is so powerful. Singapore controls these Malay Straits right here. And then there's a couple others that are a little bit wider, but kind of choke points, one between Korea and Japan, and then there's a series of islands down here, which the Chinese want to control by controlling Taiwan over here. So there's these naval choke points, and some ungodly percentage of trade goes through them. And basically, America is in a position like the British in the late 1800s and the Spaniards in the late 1500s to maintain all of the systems throughout the world. And then there are powers that benefit from disrupting this. And who are these powers? Well, I've talked about them, and I'll be talking about them more. One of the most important is Russia. Russia is not dependent on sea trade. They have most of their money in international trade is in oil and gas, and they have overland pipelines to Europe, and they have an overland relationship with China. So really, Russia, unless they destroy the ability of Europe to trade and Europe to make money, and they're a little bit dependent in that sense, they still have an open ability, really, to disrupt the trading lanes and still maintain their economy. They do it too much, causes nuclear war. That's what the problem with the first Cold War was, and they could be devastated, but they've proven to be rational in the past. However, they are a potential disruptive power to America, with navies in the Mediterranean, in the Atlantic, in the Pacific. Basically taking the place of England in the 1800s of ruling the waves, but not ruling the waves only to our own benefit, but ruling the waves to keep this incredible international trade of, I think, 30 or 40 trillion dollars a year going, which China is dependent on. If China doesn't export, they will very, very likely not create the jobs that they are now, and they would have a revolution faster than you could blink, or a civil war. and then, at any rate, lots of unrest. Same thing with India. India would like to dominate the Indian Ocean, but they are also becoming more and more dependent on trade. Europe absolutely needs a world power. They don't have the Navy. They don't have the military power to maintain the powers. However, there are other powers in the world that would benefit from disruption. The number one power that would benefit from disruption, Iran. Iran can't benefit from too much disruption because if the trading lanes are completely ruined through war, they can't sell any oil. And they provide so many subsidies to their people that even a slight reduction in the price of oil wouldn't bankrupt them, but would cause them internal unrest. And then in the Western Hemisphere, there is Venezuela. Venezuela is the largest oil producer in the South America. It's not the largest in the Americas or, the Western Hemisphere. America still produces 7 million barrels a day of oil. I think is third or fourth after Saudi Arabia and Russia. There might be some other big powers that also produce a lot of oil. And the president of Venezuela now is Hugo Chavez. He's been in there for about 10 years, done some shows on him. And what he has done is he has very, very slowly, he's been elected democratically, but he's had a series of referendums, a series of changes in the Constitution that has basically, after 10 years, allowed him to take over the oil industry, to concentrate the media in his hands, and to basically run his entire opposition away so that they have very, very little power. He has a tremendous amount of oil revenue, produces about 2 to 3 million barrels a day, which results in 20 to 30 billion dollars a year. And about 2/3 of that goes to subsidies within his country. He's created a party. He's taken all the left-wing parties and brought it together into one just in the last couple of years. United that, and that party has a militia. He controls the slums in the capital of Caracas over here. And basically, he's concentrated power over a period of 10 years. The beginning of that concentration of power was because there were two parties, conservative and liberal, and those aren't conservative and liberal in the American sense of the word at all. Conservatives are basically feudalists. They're big landowners. And liberals are basically big, giant businessmen, neither of which were very democratic. And there was a very, very large, people don't know much about this, civil war from the 50s, I think, to the 70s, where thousands and thousands of people were killed. Later, a communist, Fidel, Cuban-backed communist group called FARC, no, that was in Colombia, but they also had their own in Venezuela, also disrupted things and killed some people. But mainly, the two legitimate parties, conservative and liberal, have fought these incredibly bloody civil wars, basically to unite power within themselves. And the main source of power in Venezuela is the army and the Congress until Chavez came along. And basically what Chavez did was he was elected by a slight majority, I think 54, 56%. He immediately took government revenues and started building a militia with them and concentrating subsidies to the poor, and then held a referendum which basically reduced the power of Congress, reduced the ability of the other parties to operate, and allowed him to begin to rule by decree. Then they had a series of referendums. He didn't have total power, but there was a coup attempt in 2002, and during that coup attempt he took over the army, he took over the oil industry, and once he had the oil industry, then he really kicked up the subsidies to the point where about 70% of the people, and those are the 70% that support him, are completely dependent on government welfare of one kind or another. One of the odd things is that he has a complete subsidy of people who drive cars, some of whom were in the middle class, and subsidizes gas to the tune of 12 cents a gallon. So that's $9 billion right off the top right there. That's about a third of his oil revenue just going to that one subsidy. Then food, health care, you name it, welfare payments, so on and so forth is subsidized. He has supported and created some satellites. Basically, he's secretly funded them to run in elections, and once they took power, they've been able to consolidate power. Bolivia is Evo Morales. He's a native Indian, I guess you might call him, native Bolivian, I guess would be the politically correct term. And he has already had his referendum that reduces the power of the Congress, but he still has trouble with the army, which hasn't completely been brought to his will, and with the he's nationalized the gas industry, which irritated his neighbors of Bolivia or Brazil, which subsidized it and which basically paid for it in order to become energy independent from the big oil companies in the world. And now he's just nationalized the tin industry, which is the biggest employer in Bolivia, and he's on his way to creating, rule by decree, basically a totalitarian system. The other guy who has been elected just in the last year is a guy named Correa, who is the new president of Ecuador. Now, Ecuador is the second largest oil exporter, also a member of OPEC in Latin America. And the reason I'm talking about Latin America is because the third, basically, I don't know what we want to call it, populista, that's what they call themselves, but really these are kind of slow-moving socialists. And they're trying to create a socialist system in their countries and doing a pretty fair job of it, too. Basically, what Correa did, he took over, I believe, in the last round of elections late in 2006. He immediately took over the Congress. He put policemen around the Congress building, threw out or fired, I don't know how you do that in a constitutional system, all of the opposition congressmen in Ecuador, and put a police cordon around the congressional building, and not to let them back in. And he has just put through a referendum to replace the Congress completely with a constitutional assembly, and that constitutional assembly would write a new constitution. The assumption is it would be a constitution similar to the last one, which is the third constitution that's come around since Chavez has first taken over, that basically gives the president of the country the right to rule by decree, to privatize all private enterprise, and basically to take over the media, which he hasn't done yet. So that just occurred. 19% of the ballots counted as of April 16th, so this is still out of date by a few days. He had 83% of the voters. I also heard that he ended up with 78%. And this is going to give him free rein, basically, to take over the government just as Chavez did. But Chavez, very, very patient guy, took 10 years to get to a position where he was a rule-by-decree presidential dictator. Correa is on par to do that in 1 year. Morales is taking about 2 years to concentrate power. So what does this mean? The opposition in Ecuador is still alive. There is a former president out there whose name is Lucio Gutierrez, and Lucio Gutierrez is a former president who has been overthrown in the course of many, many coups in that particular country. And he still is going to run candidates in this referendum for the National Assembly. So it's hard to say. I think that with the rules that they've created for this National Assembly, which I have a feeling is going to change once Correa gets complete control, still allows, you need a supermajority to be able to force the Constitution through. That was an issue also in Venezuela, where the opposition, in fact, I'm not sure it was the opposition, it might have been Chavez himself, put a recall into their constitution over there, and the opposition within the last year or two attempted to recall Chavez and lost. And it was after that Chavez basically ran another referendum, basically set up a constitution that says I can rule by decree. So that's going on. So basically, who are the Chavez's satellites? Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, and the former head of the Sandinistas just was elected president of Nicaragua, so now you have Nicaragua too. So what are we doing about it? We're not doing a lot. I think that there was little notice paid when Chavez went to the UN during, the UN General Assembly, when all of the world leaders come together and each one makes a speech. And basically he called President Bush the devil and insulted the United States in the UN. There was a little fuss about it, but basically the problem is that none of our media really cares about Latin America one way or the other. And the ironic thing about it is that our best ally may end up being another left-wing, but a left-wing democracy, of Brazil, who is very, very upset with Evo Morales, who is the first of the satellites, the Chavista satellites. And basically they nationalized the natural gas fields, which were paid for and developed by Brazil, because along with ethanol for cars, Brazil needed natural gas for electricity in order to become energy independent. So that really screwed up their plan for energy independence. So there's a lot going on in Latin America. There's another example of that in Venezuela, where Venezuela just revoked, and this is again Chavez, the approval to operate of RCTV, which is probably, I don't know for sure, but I believe it's the last opposition-owned TV station, probably the last opposition-owned media that is at all independent from the Chavista government. They just authorized a demonstration by the opposition. Oh, isn't that nice of them? Said, we're going to throw the police around there because we don't want any disorder. But the reason there was a demonstration is because there was a decision to remove the permit for the channel to transmit over television. So the last opposition channel, basically bringing all the media together under the control of the government, under the control of Chavez and his movement. And so basically doing pretty much what Putin was doing in Russia, which is to create an authoritarian government completely under the control of the president. Basically, I know I'm stopped here for a little bit because the article that I'm quoting from is in Spanish, but it is the responsibility of the state in its role. He decried, this is the Interior Minister, here exists a state of right. All the activities are given there and are compliant, and any march has to be under the law, he said. And he said in the last weeks the opposition intends to create new developments, and we're not going to allow them to take a pretext, and we are not going to end the removal of the permission to operate. My name is Reed Silverne. Name of the show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride. I'm a federal worker and I'm proud of it, and I am signing off.